as I said earlier on in the day, we're moving on to Division B for our final match of the day, where things are looking a little bit less happy overall for our players, as Ryvius and Alan are fighting already on just our first week of the round robin to guarantee themselves at the top so they are not relegated out of GM.
Yes, indeed. Alan, whenever we see him on stream, I'm always impressed by the level of play and especially decisions that you can make on the fly with this priest deck in particular. This meta, which has a lot of card generation involved in playing the meta decks, I think suits a player who is able to make these decisions as soon as possible and just not be flip-flopping with their opinions like certain casters do. As for the rest of Alan's lineup, there's also a druid in here, which I feel this is probably an archetype that's not too popular amongst the older APAC players other than Surrender.
Yes, I mean, the numbers do seem to suggest, as well as popular opinion, that Druid is not the bring over Rogue, because that is like the real slot he's missing out on there, or I guess Warrior as well, actually, as he's got Demon Hunter and Druid over Warrior and Rogue as the two more standard decks in there. I'd be very interested to hear what Alan's thought process was, other than just, haha, mana go brr, in order to get up to the high mana totals and cheat out all his big spells. Because other than that, I do feel like Druid is not especially well suited in the current metagame.
How come you know the name of the anime I'm watching and the title of the script for Mull It Over episode 24, far in the future? Because that will still be the Mulligan game plan for Druid in the next meta, Mana Go Burr.
Yes, the joke has been made a few times there, Gia, but it's a timeless one. It's true. That's what the Druid deck is pretty much always looking to do at the start of the game. One thing I am glad that we're seeing from Ryvius' side, however, is the Demon Hunter. This feels like a very Ryvius style of deck. And I also love the inclusions that he's got there in this list, taking things in a slightly different direction, cutting one of the Glaive-bound Adepts from the late game, the damage approach, to put in an Immolation Aura in the early game, which in testing for us looked like a super clutch inclusion.
Yeah, it does mess with a lot of the board states that classes like Rogue and Mage can put down in the early game. And the fact that it comes down even before Breath of the Infinite, it just doesn't feel like a reflex to play around Immolation Aura just yet. The fact that both players have Demon Hunter is very interesting because if we potentially run into a mirror, I don't think that's a matchup we see very often at all.
Yeah, I believe Alan's Demon Hunter actually got banned, which again really speaks to how Alan feels. How Ryvius feels about the deck. He has a lot of respect for it, which I think is correct. As I always talk about, Warrior, Bomb Warrior, and Soul Demon Hunter are very similar archetypes overall. They have a bit of clear, but for the most part, they are face decks that use their weapons to close out the game. And so given that Alan doesn't have the Warrior, it's the next best ban.
And Ryvius also not having Warrior, and maybe perhaps even if he did, Alan chooses to prioritize banning away the Turtle Mage, seeing the power of it yesterday and in other regions. For real, this one match in Division B that we're seeing today feels like an entirely different meta, just people not auto-bringing Warrior and not auto-banning Warrior.
We get into this game, though, ripping the Dragon's Horde, and he gets some pretty nuts options. I literally don't know what's better out of Gandling or Altruist. They're both pretty nuts.
I mean, they both kind of synergize with the same type of cards, just cheap things. With Rogue, you play a lot of zero-cost cards, and it's a bit more difficult to finagle your hand into having all of the cheapest stuff on the outer regions. So just going for Gandling for guaranteed a 4/4 around turn 5, because you'd probably save the Lackey by then, seems like the more consistent play.
Yeah, I really like this pick from Ryvius, because the problem I find with, or I would anticipate, I haven't been in that situation before, the problem with Altruist in this Rogue deck is against Priest, you're trying to discover big things. Like, he will take the biggest dragon off of the Draconic Lackey. He's going to take big spells, probably off of Wand Thief. And it just gets in the way of the Outcast, whereas guaranteed 4/4s is obviously fantastic against Priest.
That's right. If I were playing a game on ladder, you'd know I would 100% pick this Altruist, because that would be so cool.
I know.
Just to rip that as Rogue, but Gandling definitely going to be more consistent here. Whoa! Hello? Imperial Arcanist?
Okay.
For the buff?
That's illegal. Straight up. That is insane.
And it keeps growing.
I haven't even seen that card on the board since like 2014.
And Alan just doesn't have a way to deal with it. It were a 3-3, he could have... Well, I guess Shadow Madness wouldn't have a target for it to kill into, but that's a big yikes.
He didn't have any read on the secret, did he? Because he hadn't played any spells, so he didn't know it was ambush. I mean, if he did, he could have gone Broomstick and then Shadow Madness, the 2-3, which would have been pretty nuts. But he can do that next turn still. I think this is probably the best way to go about it. Even then, you just tank 5 damage here. It's not the end of the world.
I mean, he could do that if Ryvius taunts the Ethereal, but I am pretty sure he's going to taunt something else. Put a stop to that.
That's sick. That's a very, very good read from Ryvius.
Ethereal Arcanist in Rogue.
So, Mind Flayer into Broomstick? You can copy the 7-7, obviously only getting a 3-3 on your side, but then it allows you to take out the Taunt, and then next turn, you're looking at going for Shadow Madness.
Yeah, I think that's the best line of action. He's going to take so much damage in the meantime, but... Okay, actually, upon further inspection, Holy Nova does a similar thing, because he can Broomstick plus Shadow Madness. Oh, wait. It's left at 2 HP, the taunt.
Yes.
Which is complicated. I thought it would end up at 1 and the Broomstick could deal with it.
Well, the Rush can deal with it, right? From the dormant minion that's going to come out. Is his plan. I mean,
it's just taking the least damage possible.
Yeah, it does mean he doesn't develop a Mind Flayer Kaj, which could be pretty useful here. But I guess then the downside actually is he can just sack in the poisonous minion, so it defeats the point in the first place.
Ryvius miscounted something here.
He thought...
Don't let the door hit you.
Okay.
He's Blackjack
I don't
stunnering.
think it was.
What? He's stunnering his own poisonous here to play around the Shadow Madness.
That is next level.
How strong is his read? That is insane.
It's invincibly strong.
Oh!
Alan just can't kill it again.
That was so sick.
How did he know?
This man has powers.
I would never in a million years do that.
That is spooky. He deliberately didn't even play the gambling.
Yeah. And he emoted like he was planning to go gambling or something else, but then he ended up on the best possible play into Alan's hand.
I must consider.
I mean, we talk about cast division here affecting our plays. With Ryvius, we need to let cast division affect our plays because he just knows both players' hands.
Certainly feel like it.
Kaj trade, tank 11 more damage, and then just die most likely?
Alan just can't do anything. Ethereal Arcanist has gotten to connect so many times this game. Just a better Gruul.
Oh my god. So, he hasn't won the game yet. There is, of course, Soul Mirror available next turn to pretty much guarantee the clear.
Right. Even if he could deal with all of the minions on board, 3 missiles to the face is still a little bit short of lethal. So I think Ryvius will just want to stunner away this Karsh. He can use Spellbender to activate it.
Right.
And Vendetta first on the 3-4. Hit in a dagger.
Trade. Yeah. Like, I was wondering if like Gandling was a proposition because yes, the 4/4s die to the Soul Mirror that you're afraid of, but it sticks something fairly powerful that you can follow up with next turn.
That's true. If we go for that baseline play of clear everything, you end up with 2 1/2s on the board and a dagger equipped. Then if the play is just Soul Mirror, then you still lethal.
Okay.
Because you can broom out other minions to deal with the 1/1s on the other side of the board. And clear it entirely for arcane missiles.
Oh, it's complicated, right? Because, I mean, if you are afraid of exactly Soul Mirror and nothing else, it's like better to go Blackjack and then Gandling just because it doesn't die then.
You're right.
Like, clearly his read is not that strong.
Ah. He has it, right? Even if it's just Soul Mirror here, because he can rush out the cards with the broom to deal with the 3/3 Grandling that survives, and then
You have best.
yeah. Oh wait, he didn't. That was assuming Raise Dead doesn't get played, and then he goes Arcane Missiles, Dagger, Gandling Face for lethal.
Yeah, like he was obviously testing for Counterspell first, and then I think he realized he was very likely dead anyway. I think the play there was probably just say, if it's Counterspell, I'm losing the game anyway, right? Because if he goes Raise Dead and then hits the Soul Mirror, he's just dead on board anyway. So I think a slight miscalculation there from Alan, who was relying too heavily on getting rid of a potential Counterspell. But we can clearly see it would have been game either way.
Wait, if it was Counterspell, then you don't take the 3 from Raise Dead, and in some worlds you're alive.
Okay,
But still,
okay.
I think that the chance of it being Counterspell, and if you're playing to that world where you do just throw away a Raise Dead, in the long term, I don't think it wins very often. But all of these niche situations, Alan had just fallen so far behind. That Ethereal Arcanist, I've never seen a classic card be so strong in so long.
Absolutely ludicrous. And just the pièce de résistance, the cherry on the cake there, was that beautiful play that Ryvius made with getting rid of his own poisonous guy because he had that hard read on the Shadow Madness in the deck. Such a cool line that he took there, and means that he did end up taking the well-deserved victory there. 1-0 now for Ryvius against Alan, who had an unfortunate end to the game there. But both of these players down in Division B, it is, you have no friends here. You're fighting to take the win no matter how much you respect your competitor on the other side of the table. So when we come back, we're going to see if Ryvius can complete the sweep, or if Alan, as we've expected so much from him, can start to live up to that expectation. We'll be right back. You're watching the last series of the day here for Asia Pacific before we send you over to Europe and then Americas. Super cool first game in the series between Alan and Ryvius, it's got to be said, which you and I definitely expect from Ryvius at this point. Whether or not he's had success from series to series definitely varies and from season to season, but he's always a delight to watch in terms of the archetypes he's bringing and his playstyle overall.
Absolutely. While I don't think Alan really could have done anything with the outcome of Ethereal Arcanist to win that game, it was just really fun seeing Rivius' small optimization. We still have no idea how he got the read on Shadow Madness being there in hand, but it absolutely locked out any hope Alan had of winning that game. But there's still hope to win the series, of course, with Alan rocking Demon Hunter, as is Ryvius. But it looks like Alan is going to go for another shot with his Priest in the mirror first up.
Right, and a mirror in terms of classes for sure, with it being Priest on Priest. Archetypes, not necessarily though, as Ryvius is rocking the double of Priest, or the standard Galakron Priest, as opposed to the Highlander variant, which Alan is going for. Do you have any inclination as to who is in the lead in this matchup? Because, I mean, at first glance, they seem like pretty similar decks, I've got to say.
I have a pretty strong inclination towards Highlander being in the lead here, because Ryvius has leaned very much towards an anti-aggro package with the Wild Pyro in there, double Cleric of Scales, and none of the invoke effects for his Galakron. It feels like Alan will just have no shortage of resources compared to Ryvius.
Alan's Mulligan did definitely lean itself towards this kind of a game where you just pass for the first 4 turns without doing anything. Because Galakron was the only card kept in the Mulligan. At least our APAC players are turboing through these pass turns, which is more than we could say for Europe.
Very specific people in Europe, for sure. Okay, first minion hits the board, and Ryvius can respond with a dragon of his own, nice and sticky, or he can choose to just straight off the bat. I get the feeling that you can hit better targets for the steel than Kobold Sticky Finger.
You
but
can for
punish
sure.
for your own dragon coming down is that the steel the other way is doubly scary.
Right, that's the big thing, isn't it? And also for Ryvius, keeping Murazond intact is like kind of a big deal for next turn. Being able to go coin Murazond or coin Siamat into Murazond does make for some very strong plays indeed.
I mean, if he goes for that line, he could just save us so much time in this matchup, and I'd be eternally grateful. I mean, in certain worlds, Alan does have Soul Mirror to respond to a big push onto the board. But whether or not it's deliberate to get things done as soon as possible, it's worth mentioning that tempo is relevant in this matchup, even though the keep from Alan would suggest that he's playing more for value. Kobold Sticky Finger has danced quite a bit on either side of the board.
So, oh wow, okay. That is unplayable at the moment, because I was going to say coin Murazond to cast the Cabal Acolyte does not activate the spell burst, but he then drew the Raise Dead to go along with it, but nothing has died on his side of the board yet, so he couldn't have gone coin Murazond into Raise Dead to steal back there. But if he could, I think that would have been the line.
Kind of feel like he can do better with the steals. In any case, I'm low-key surprised that Ryvius goes for the Wind Fury on the Siamat for the full clear, because the value of having a Siamat behind the taunt seemed quite good to me, but it's just trying to prevent any and all Apotheosis targets, even though Alan himself is running the Highlander list.
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it? Because it plays around Apo. It also kind of plays around Soul Mirror, because the other way this board could look would be a 4-4 on Alan's side and a 6-6 on Ryvius' side, which makes for a pretty strong Soul Mirror for Alan.
And you can respond with Murrow?
Fair.
Oh!
Oi, oi, oi.
Yeah,
Yep.
You're taking the one on the left, 100%.
The dream.
Alan is just going to try and free up some hand space now, which makes sense. I think the Highlander Priest is the one that's slightly in more danger of just getting all their value stuck in hand and not being able to answer minion card for card.
I like this line from Alan as well, trading away the Lazul first and then going for the Raised Dead. He gave himself the highest chance of getting it. Wasn't rewarded for this line, though, with Sticky Finger being pretty miserable.
Does make Hearthstone sticky, though.
I wonder.
Okay.
Keep it on.
Still don't get it. I still don't get it. Okay, Ryvius. This is not the greatest of Murazon turns, but he can go for the Dragon Musk Archer instead, because now if you spend the discount, it doesn't mess with Murazon on the following turn as an option.
Sure.
There's
Yep.
potential to go for Cleric of Scales and snipe his Oh, he's not running Shadow Madness in the base list.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what he's looking for quite here off Cleric of Scales. Like, nothing is super clean yet.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking of specifically Shadow Madness, but
Right.
just replaying Siamat is worth thinking about.
Oh!
Okay.
Oh my god! All these Murazons, what the hell is going on?
All my hopes of this game going quickly have been thrown out the window.
Well, I mean, this Muro is insane already for Alan, right? He gets Raised Dead. Like, he has too much stuff. His hand would be full, which is the only downside of the play.
And he just picked up Zephyrus, so that's one of the most important cards that he doesn't want to overdraw already out of the
Yeah, that's
pool.
true.
Must
I think it's
consider.
fine. Worst thing you could overdraw is potentially Dragon Queen Alexstrasza,
It's just so
or
much
your own
tempo.
natural.
I think you have
Murazon.
to.
Too much value.
Way too much value. I guess at least it means he can just play super liberally with his hand and throw out his cards like there's no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Ryvius can try and fish for his Soul Mirror.
He can try and fish for his Wave of Apathy as well. It's something to consider to go Cabal Acolyte Wave of Apathy.
But
This
he's
is even
wasting no
cleaner,
time
though.
whatsoever. Sees this line immediately. It's quite strong.
This is super
Steal away the 2/6 with Spellburst impact.
Hand is too full.
Man, Ryvius sees the lines immediately.
Yeah, he's been playing this a whole bunch, you can tell. So
Cabal Acolyte plus Time Rip the non-Spellburst 2/6 to make sure you steal back
I
the
wonder.
Spellburst 2/6.
that looks super strong to me.
Uh-huh.
Puppet Masters controlling Puppet Masters here. It's getting a bit ridiculous. Like, there must be so many layers in this stage where every time you go up, there's someone controlling that person with strings who's controlling that person with strings.
It's like a Matryoshka doll.
Yeah,
But-
exactly.
Okay. That looks like a decent Murazon to me. Especially since he has two. But the alternative play, of course, is just Tiamat Rush Wind Fury again. You kind of want to save Tiamat with Apotheosis, but it's not like he needs the health.
So, Mirazon to get Cabal Acolyte on the board, and then he could go Cleric, and if he exactly raised it, he could activate it, but it feels too flimsy.
Yeah, and there's also a failure rate with the Time Rip. So
Yeah.
in retrospect, much safer for Ryvius to go for this. Alan kept this Galakron to begin with, but I think he never wants to hit that hero power for a long time. He just wants to
Yeah,
get cards
true.
out of his hand.
I mean, it speaks to the question mark of keeping Galakron in the first place, because I've heard many people say, you know, imagine thinking the Priest Mirror is about finding Galakron. That's not the way the matchup goes anymore.
Another Muro. Hello.
I mean, you just take it, right? It's such a good card. Apotheosis is nice, I suppose, but he's just not dying.
It's just that if he wants to deal with the Siamat this turn and he takes Muro, then we might have to see Zephyrus come down. So, because he has a 3/4 facing a 6/4.
Okay.
So that's the reason for Apple. I'm leaning towards Apo, and then you Cobalt first to deliberately
Must
overdraw one of the
consider.
1-cost cards, and then you play Apo after, so that you
Mm.
have space to draw a card turn after.
Okay. That sounds reasonable to me.
It feels so bad to give up on a Murazon, but he needs to deal with this Tiamat.
Fine. I'm not happy about it, but I accept it.
Most petulant fine ever.
Whatever.
Here. Instead of Cobalt, prioritizing his lifesteal minion and getting down the Vilfian. Very reasonable as well.
So a reasonable Mirazond, if you want to throw it down now, is just one of the bigger threats. Not an insane one, though.
And we are arriving at the point where it does feel like Alan's value has heavily outweighed Ryvius's. So
Drastically.
as long as Alan doesn't play too hard into a Murazon, which he knows that there's at least one in Ryvius's hand,
Yes, he does.
then Alan should be very far in the lead.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to overextend all too much, to be honest, because Zephyrus at this point isn't offering clears, it isn't offering health, it's offering Bloodlust, it's offering Savage Roar, and it is killing Ryvius very, very fast.
Did you ever get the answer on conditions for Doomhammer? That's not
I
a bad
got-
pickup at all.
I got a lot of different messages, and I feel like a lot of people knew a bit of the information. It sounds super complicated, but I don't think that Doomhammer is going to be offered anytime soon. It generally contingent, the contingent was have a clear board. That's how you got it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
Already
damage
I was
straight
looking
up.
for ways to find lethal with Zephyrus. Because
Right.
there's a Shadow Madness in this equation as well.
That's true. So there's 9, 13 plus 12, 25 damage, I think, as I count.
Me too. You can't fit in the Apo alongside everything else.
That's
A
nutty.
little bit short.
So
In which case, I
you,
think he's fine just ripping a Soul Mirror here?
yeah,
Low
he-
value?
again, we're talking about the one Murazond. He doesn't know that there's a second one there,
Yeah.
though, right? Does he?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the best play on this turn. It just cleans things up so nicely and still represents lethal next turn.
Yeah, this is the play that tips the balance. Finally, Alan has committed one of his bombshells of a resource to the board, and Ryvius has his ace up his sleeve of the second Murazon.
If he needs to gain health, he could go Apotheosis first on either of the 3/2s, but I agree. Just clear the board. Health is not his biggest concern right now.
Pretty big deal, though, that both of the Kobolds survive on either side. So we're still looking at the Zephyrus Shadow Madness play
Yeah.
as an option next turn. Looks like Ryvius is aiming this heal at a minion. So 9 plus 9 from Bloodlust. That's lethal.
It's...
Shadow Madness, Zephyrus Bloodlust.
Oh! That is lethal! That's gonna end things out. Ryvius healing his minion here.
Yeah.
He almost certainly wasn't accounting for the Shadow Madness this time, even after his god read of Shadow Madness in the last game. And it's enough to perfectly close out the game. Good spot.
This was the spot we were looking at the turn before when Ryvius aimed that heal to his minion. It was
Yeah.
all over. And even though if he healed his face, it's technically one off. At that point, Zephyrus doesn't offer you the lethal, and we could have just seen a very different game. Ryvius would have potentially had time to play his Alexstrasza, etc., etc. But from the very beginning, I think you could see how the differences in the way the lists are built would lend itself heavily in Alan's favor.
Yeah, I mean, your prophecy coming perfectly true there. It just felt like, even though Zephyrus can come down at the start for wild growth, which I kind of question that you even go for in the first place in the Priest Mirror, the real thing is just that constant threat. It's not even playing the Zephyrus, it's the threat of playing Zephyrus that really distorts the matchup one way or the other. And Alan showed that so nicely there by developing just enough stuff every turn to close out the game. Priest taking a win is not the biggest deal in the world because it's Priest. It's a super strong archetype at the moment. But overall, for Alan, it does start to look a little bit harder now, I think, with the Mage and the Druid in particular that could struggle.
Yes, indeed. I am not super concerned about Druid, strangely enough, because it seems like every time we see it on stream, it puts in the work. It's up against Rogue that I feel it would have the most difficult matchup, but
Okay.
against Demon Hunter, I think it can get over the top here or put down enough taunts in the way that it can just race the face plan of the Demon Hunter. The matchup that we'll be seeing up next seems to be that exact one. And so you have to ask, if Demon Hunter is going to take the matchup, what's the ideal opener? And they do have a couple minions on curve.
Yeah, minions on curve is decent. Hitting them in the face is always decent as Druid, as Demon Hunter, sorry. It's kind of what you want to do. But the real trick card you always have to talk about that you're looking to hit for in the Dream is Magtheridon. Pretty much every time we've seen Magtheridon in Demon Hunter, it's looked very weak because it's been going up against Mage, against Rogue, which it is not designed for. Against Druid, however, a 12-12 coming down right at the start of the game is super hard to deal with.
It's true. And there are certain curves where you can just play out the Magtheridon and then go for the clear on the next turn to activate it, because Druid is one of the classes where they can't really interact with the 1/3s in such a way that they completely shut down the Magtheridon. Best they can do is buff it out of range of Shard Shatter Mystic.
Oh, pretty disgusting draws now for Alan. He can go Vate Overgrowth, which means he'll have 5 mana next turn, overloaded for 2, so he can play Wild Growth then. Looks pretty clean. He could fit in Nature Studies along the way to try and find the Guardian Animals.
Yeah, or just card draw in any shape or form will be very useful for Alan. And he has that Twilight Runner to potentially get that done. Meanwhile, Ryvius' opener has been very slow. He has a curve, coin Marrow Slicer into Marrow Slicer.
I mean, that's pretty good. Unless your opponent's hitting taunts, this will kill them very fast.
True. Oh man. Do you take Forest Aid ever?
So what, you're ramping up to 6 here, you go to 7, play the Twilight Runner. I think I'd rather hit Germination, honestly, and just copy the Twilight Runner.
If you didn't have the Twilight Runner and the turn after Wild Growth is potentially Overgrowth, then okay.
He's just going for it, straight up.
I mean, it's technically a follow-up to the turn. He doesn't need to Overgrowth to hit Forest Aid in 2 turns' time anyway.
Finally, though, Gia, we're seeing the reasoning behind Immolation Aura in Ryvius' Demon Hunter. The Forest Aid from the Druid. It was his master plan all along.
Absolutely. Eric, it's to kill all of the totems from Totem Goliath next week when it gets buffed.
Of course.
Come on. Stay on track.
Well, one of the Soul Fragments just got drawn. So the play of Coin Soul Shard into Soul Shard, I should say Lapidary into Lapidary does not work anymore. So are we just looking at Coin Marrow Slicer into Marrow Slicer and then Lapidary?
Yeah. It's slow. I mean, okay, it's not really slow. It's just pushing as much base damage as you can immediately, but it just feels rather flimsy because you don't have any minions to support this curve. And it kind of means he's locked into doing nothing next turn if he just wants to re-equip Marrow Slicer.
It can fall apart very quickly, that's for sure, but at the same time, it could be very, very powerful. I like the preemptive use of playing out the Ironbark here because of Blade Dance, which I think Ryvius would quite happily just rip there on this turn if he had it available.
Absolutely. Okay, that's a minion presence.
Way better. It doesn't shuffle the Soul Fragments, but that's fine, right? He still should... unless he draws 2, he'll be fine.
Very unlikely.
Yeah.
Okay. Start with some draw on this Panther. I assume it's gonna hit the 4-2. Or not. Worth noting that Ryvius runs 1 natural consume magic in the list. So Hunt is a little bit scary. Man, these tutus are actually insane.
Yeah,
Where's
they're
the
pretty
immolation
nuts.
aura?
He kind of needs it, right? Like, Soul Shard Lapidary is so much wasted mana here. Oh, that's
Like,
okay.
Chaos Strike is, yeah, potentially Chaos Strike was a lot of wasted mana, and the Lapidary was a lot of wasted damage.
Yeah.
This top deck makes things simpler for Ryvius, but he is not ahead on board.
I mean, the problem is that then he doesn't have mana to delay the survival of the fittest on turn 10, which means he's just gonna die to this onslaught. He just plays it again! Why
That's
play
so
the Ysera?
Oh my gosh. And Ryvius should have the read.
Oh,
So we're looking at Shard Shatter Mystic or Immolation or the Skull as an out.
it's gotta be Skull. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the only way you're going for it there. Alan praying for no answer. Please don't hit it.
Soul Fragment means that next card is not discounted, but the third one is, and that's not it!
If he goes
Forest
Soul Shit trade, it doesn't matter. He's just
No.
dead.
There's far too much on board.
Oh.
What was this game? This is a new Druid archetype. I
Me and the
thought
boys.
survival of the fittest applied to animals, not plants.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's I mean, it does technically apply to plants as well, and these are the beefiest plants I think you've ever seen, punching Ryvius directly in the face. And it's got to be said, what a pick from Ryvius. I don't know if from Alan to go for the trees in the first place. I doubt he envisaged this exact scenario, but it's not ridiculous to assume you go Forest Shade into Survival of the Fittest. If they don't have the clear, you just win.
I mean, when Alan picked the Forest Aid, he did not have the Survival of the Fittest in hand, but what he
Yeah.
did have was guaranteed Twilight Runner to stick and draw 2 cards. It was a game plan that I wasn't thinking of in particular when I first did take Forest Aid. I was just thinking it's a follow-up play to the Twilight Runner, but I completely did not consider how powerful the threat of Survival of the Fittest would be. It's not often that we see alternate game plans because compared to decks like Mage, Rogue, Priest, there's so many generation cards. In Druid, it's just the nature studies, but even
Yeah.
that one card can take the direction of the matchup in such a different way.
I mean, especially when you play it like that, even deviating away from Ysera on turn 9 to play Forest Aid for 9 mana and only getting 4 Treants because of board space issues. Like, it was a horrible play, but at the same time, it was the best play I've ever seen there from Alan to get the win on the following turn with the Survival of the Fittest. It was such a cool game.
It's true. Survival of the Fittest does things. I just couldn't think of an example of a parasitic plant at the moment, but I know those exist. There are plants that strangle other plants, or at least they take up their nutrients. It's a cruel world we live in, Dara.
Mm. Yeah,
And
I'm
it
learning
applies to
something new.
GM too, because there's 3 people getting relegated at the end of the season.
That's true. Survival of the fittest, indeed. And I mean, I think it's fair to say, based on what we're seeing from Alan, that great new talent is moving up into Grandmasters. I'm super happy with the promotions we are seeing. Some fit survivors, indeed.
And this hand is the package straight up from Alan. 3 keep.
I mean, the right to, undeniably, yes. Mana Cyclone, probably yes. Probably yes. I mean, I always talk about this anti-synergy between Evocation and Apprentice. But he throws it away. This is twice, Chia, in 2 days that I have seen players not keep Apprentice plus Evocation. I can't even begin to justify that. I am losing my mind.
I don't know. Do I even know this deck? I thought that's the bread and butter. You want to keep Apprentice Evocation. That's the most powerful thing you do with this deck. The only argument I can come up with for not keeping it is you don't get to do that powerful thing ideally till around, what, 4 or 5 mana? And maybe Alan feels he needs to be more aggressive, but man, I would not in a million years have tossed that.
I disagree with that so strongly. I mean, yesterday I already had to watch Felkeen in Europe mulligan away the Evocation when he had Apprentice, but at least he kept the Apprentice. That's what you're looking for all the time with the Mage deck. It's the dream.
Okay, well, we have to give Alan the benefit of the doubt. We've seen Blitzchung do off-the-wall mulligans with keeping Raz, for example, not quite as against our morals and principles as throwing away Apprentice Evocation, but we have to see if he is able to justify this game plan.
Yeah.
Arcane Intellect is draw here, and he has mana to go Solarian Cram Session for maximum card draw on the next turn. But this way, he potentially sticks both of these minions. Just the way he's playing this early game makes me feel like Alan just wanted minions on curve, which Apprentice, it's not a curve play against this Demon Hunter.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, maybe if you're just looking for lab partner Astromancer Solarian to curve out and hit them. I still disagree, but I'll see how it works out to see if there's any logic behind his
Demons.
Oh, if there's any logic at all. That's a bit savage. Like, I disagree too, but I mean,
goes
for
against
sure
everything
Alan
I've
has a
learned from the
reason,
deck.
right? We're just trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah. Okay. I will wait to see the logic behind his thinking, is how I'll phrase it instead. Because I have respect for Alan. I'm sure he's thinking something.
Well, it's going to be a very effective cram session. He can preload the lab partner for a very juicy Raz the next turn in all likelihood, but Ryvius has Blade Dance already loaded up for the next turn.
Juicy raspberries.
Oh, it says explode!
Okay,
Wow,
sure. Just
this Ray of Frost usage.
poor. He is a go-face gamer. I mean, I think it's how you play this matchup. You have to start racing super fast.
It's fair. I mean, the 1/1 always gets cleaned up by Raz, whether or not there is a Blade Dance coming down. But this is significantly weakening Alan's tempo game plan and damage output to the point where I think Ryvius will be pretty easily racing him out of lethal range.
For sure. I think the one thing I'm kind of skeptical of there is whether he should have played the Chaos Strike. I think that might have been worth going Twin Slice Hero Power just to eke out that little bit of extra damage over the course of the game. But it does spend his mana to draw him through to the Lapidaries and such like.
I like the play from Ryvius.
Okay.
He is still able to just go Marrow Slicer, Hero Power, plus the Twin Slices next turn. I don't think this Raz is threatening enough to kill. Yo,
Yo! What?
How is he killing the 1/3s? I'm so
He's
lost.
not.
Why not send the damage face?
Right. Yeah, I mean, did it activate his Dispel? I didn't actually see there.
Not sure. But even if it's for a single card draw,
Right.
wouldn't you rather have the 5 damage sent to face this turn, another 5 on
Yes.
the next turn, Eldraki
Like,
Twin Slice?
Even if
I
you
guess,
don't...
yeah.
I
The
would
entire
accept...
hand before that card draw was not lethal yet, but you had time to draw even without the Consume Magic.
Right, and I think I'd accept not drawing a card from the silence just to get Marrow Slicer equipped and hitting my opponent in the face here, rather than giving them 3 extra damage to kill me each turn.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like, if he had a Shatter Mystic or second Blade Dance in hand, sure, but he doesn't. Okay, I would have to ask some Demon Hunter experts about this next time. That's a skull off the top.
Huge draw, though. That's what he's moving towards
Mystic.
as soon as possible.
Shard Shatter could be huge.
Warlock.
What's going on?
Okay. It's not the best there. Sociologist with Soulshare can get him a little bit of extra something, but he's drawn a lot of the soul fragments now, so it's not going to be as juicy as he might want. And with Solarian Prime on the other side, ready to come down whenever Alan needs,
I wonder
the clock is closing rapidly on Ryvius.
what makes something real.
So it's a board clear no matter what on this turn, right? Because he can Soul Share one of the 1/3s, and then Sociologist rush
Right.
into the other 2, which leaves him with a 12/12 Magthera.
Right. It kind of feels bad to use Militia that way,
It does.
but I mean, there's just too much pressure on the board. Otherwise,
I mean, other lines do include going for Eldraki Warblades, hitting his opponent in the face, and just
Yeah.
healing for 1 million.
I like that idea very much.
Okay. The Ogre not quite able to do what it needs to do here and summon the extra 2/2s with Taunt, which is, I mean, it's a benefit of Ryvius' line, right? Obviously, he wasn't thinking specifically the Ogre, but it does mean with the 3/1/1s here, it's difficult to get the board space.
Was that Ryvius' plan? Did he just want to preemptively clog up Alan's board?
It's part of it. I do not doubt it for a second.
I mean, it does mean that Alan can't get down both Apprentice and the Mirror Image, and Mirror Image is potentially a way to stay alive through this weapon damage. But
all right, Ice Barrier
Oh.
is what he needs, and Ice Barrier is what he gets.
And he
That
can
is so
volley one of
huge.
his guys so that Magtheridon can never go off.
That is also correct.
What is this game? Right off from
Oh
Alan's
my
Mulligan
God.
to Ryvius not pushing a second Marrow Slicer face immediately.
Raz, yep, brilliant.
Okay.
Sign me up.
Someone's out on me.
So he's at 15 effective health. There is the ability to not even really get close, to be honest now.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, if you go
There's no
Lapidary,
mana.
Hero Power Face, assuming this is Ice Barrier, from Ryvius' perspective, then he puts Alan back down to 7, in which case Kane Marrow Slicer is lethal on the following turn. You're always scared of Frostbolt no matter what.
And he would also gain 8 health in the process, which puts him back up to 20, which means he currently is absolutely surviving.
Yes. Militia? I mean,
Sure.
it makes Ryvius safer, I think. Actually, not by that much. If you just treat the damage he removes on board from these trades compared to the potential healing he could get from the Lapidary
Right.
Eldrazi this turn,
Like,
I feel like you'd get a much bigger benefit by just pushing the damage phase and setting up lethal next turn.
I
This
agree
does set
with
up
you.
lethal with minions, but it has a failure rate with like primes and freezes, right?
So it means that if the board is dealt with, Ryvius does not have lethal on the following turn, because he has 9 damage max on the following turn. So Alan has to deal with this board.
And he has a prime. Can play down.
Does have a prime.
Can play regular Solarian alongside Solarian Prime. But it's probably worth taking the lab partner so you can fit in Mana Giant at the end of the turn.
What to
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost wondering if he's trying to set up for a Raz turn. Can he trade in enough stuff here to make that work? He can, right? He can clear the board with Raz, lab partner, mirror image,
Okay.
and then he basically never dies.
Well, Kane goes through the mirror image, but oh gosh,
He can't kill him then, right? It's not enough damage.
yeah, no,
But
he doesn't
another
die
ice
immediately.
barrier.
Yeah, very good point.
It says
Across several turns, maybe.
Yeah. And with this line, Alan is avoiding the potential failure rate of even needing Solarian Prime.
Crazy. I couldn't tell you what was going on in Ryvius' head when he played that Magtheridon.
I mean, what I will say is that Marrow Slicer is 8 damage that has just sat in the hand this entire game.
Whoops.
Alan with the B. I think he's pretty confident that Ryvius messed up here. And Alan is a player who has no qualms whatsoever getting in his opponent's heads.
Who is this man? He comes into our Grandmasters tournament and starts throwing around oops to some of the most well-respected players in the entire system. I
The
love
only
it.
time I've ever seen oopses in APAC is when people are saying that I made the mistake. Sorry, I acknowledge it. Alan there with a swig of water is, no, you messed up. You know it, I know it. And with this Solarian Prime, it is almost certainly lethal, but he
It's
is...
just lethal. It's
Oh,
the
yeah,
2
with the
damage
Raz.
from Raz.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
He's playing it out, he's BMing it, he's giving it all of that. Ryvius throws it down in the end. and Alan is the victor. And I've got to be honest, despite how much I talk about Ryvius as one of the best innovators of new deck lists, playing creatively across the board, Alan, I think, just completely outplayed him in that series.
And yet, we didn't really get a real answer as to whether the Sorcerer's Mulligan was correct. Because Ryvius, I feel, did not play that the way most other Demon Hunter players would.
Yeah. That is still the question mark for me. Absolutely. I think that was pretty clear. I hope that we get an answer from Alan. Maybe we'll ask him a little bit later as to whether or not he was looking for something in specific. He is running a double mirror image list, so maybe he sees like mirror image as the win condition, quote unquote. As long as he has that later on in the game, he can stop so much damage. Or again, Mana Giant, as I always talk about against the Demon Hunter, is a super valuable card. But even then, I still think Apprentice plus Evocation is what unlocks that Mana Giant a lot of the time. What I will say at the end, though, is that I think he piloted it so beautifully, didn't rely on Solarian Prime when he didn't need to, gained all that armor in incredible fashion, and Ryvius, with some shaky lines towards the end, just didn't have the damage to close things out.
And Ryvius is a player who, when he has messed up on stream before, he has acknowledged it. He's a player who oopses himself. Remember when we saw the Blackjack Stunner on No Secret in play? So Ryvius thought that he could get some activation on it. He even tweeted out after that, I made a mistake, sorry. I wonder if Ryvius even saw that Magtheridon line as a mistake, the way that Alan pointed out and the way that you and I thought it was. Very possibly Ryvius was considering something that you and I just didn't think of, but I just am racking my brain and I don't know what would be better than the guaranteed second Marrow Slicer online and racing Alan.
I mean, I guarantee you in 30 minutes, we're going to see Ryvius on Twitter apologizing to Alan for not putting up enough of a challenge. That's, I think, the mental state that Alan puts his competitors into. Obviously, joking aside, we are all done for today with our matches in APAC. We can take a look at the standings to see how things are shaking out in both Division B and Division A now, as we took a good look at things. What a surprise. Surrender up at 2-0. What do you make of that, Gia? Yet again, starting off things very strong.
Yeah, I mean, given that he's the most sadistic, vicious, savage player in all of APAC,
True.
at least in your bizarro world, then he would be absolutely merciless in taking all of these wins. Blitzchung at 1-1. It looks like we had some wrong memory. You and I both thought we took his first series, but still with a pretty good record in it. Alan 2-0 in Division B, already cementing himself as being one of the best players in Division B, despite it being the lower half. I'm really excited to see a bunch of these other players get more time to shine next week, especially Alutemu, who only had one series to play this weekend, and it really happened in a cursed fashion, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a month of Grandmasters, and we've seen Alutemu play a grand total of one series of Hearthstone. It's ludicrous to think, given that he got all the way through to the semi-finals. Last season, he's already been in a grand finals of the playoffs, so narrowly missing out on going through to the World Championships to surrender, obviously, last year. Hopefully, things can turn them around, but I think one thing to really highlight this season is that Division B is no slouch at all. I think every single competitor there is very, very stiff competition, and you have to be on your top game in order to avoid getting down to the bottom and be relegated out, because that's what this is all about avoiding for our players. Obviously, one way that they can get back in to Grandmasters would be to do well through the Masters Tour system, of which we are going to be kicking off next week with Masters Tour Montreal once again. Players from all the different regions will be coming up against each other, so we can get that debate settled once again. How does APAC fare against the rest of the field? My heart says pretty well this time. I think that the competition is getting better and better amongst the APAC scene, and also again we can see which of our newcomers will be trying to get their spot in Grandmasters come the next season of play. We're all done here for APAC for today. 5 very, very exciting matches, which means we are going to send you over to Europe now, and then followed by the 4 matches in Americas to close out the day. Anything you want to add for some final thoughts, Gia? My brain is melted. I think I need to go have a lie down.
No, that's all right. I mean, I just wanted to say I was happy you brought up the Masters Tour, because it feels like the last time we saw Alutemu outside of that one series was all the way in the finals of the previous Masters Tour, APAC Online. He just did so well there, so it's just jarring to see him hit slump, at least it's fair to say, for these first early weeks of Grandmasters. But when we do hit the Masters Tour, it is anyone's game. Any underdog can potentially shine. So make sure you guys tune in.
It will be great stuff. We're going to send you off now to join Raven and Sottle with Europe. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, and enjoy Europe.